Happy Wednesday. Cheers to making it to hump day. I'm cheersing you a peach Alani, which I've never been a really energy drink girly. I remember in college, Monster was like the up and coming thing. And there was like a Monster truck that would drive around campus. And they actually recruited some of the cheerleaders, me and some of my friends. I was a Boise State cheerleader. Shout out to my alma mater. And they wanted us to come and put these cute little Monster shirts on and drive around in this truck. We're like listening to music and we're handing out these like energy drinks, which I think the energy drinks have gotten a little better for you. I'm not like here to defend energy drinks because I think they're probably still terrible for you. But there's something about the Alanis that like it just gets the people going. But thinking back to being like a Monster girl for the day, I'm like, wow, that was really sexist. I had no idea that they were actually just like exploiting me as a young college girl to pass out these free drinks. But we were flattered and we thought it was a cool gig because we're like, yeah, I want to pass out energy drinks and be in this cool truck and like be associated with this brand. And now looking back, I'm like, wow, Carly, great choice. Great choice. Stand up for yourself, would you? So we're trying something a little bit different today. I haven't been liking the setup of the podcast. It was feeling like really stiff. My office is great, but like the lighting is terrible. The sound isn't the best. So I'm like, what if we just like sit up in my closet? I'm literally sitting on my closet floor. If you're listening, this is your POV description for you. I'm sitting on my closet floor in my bedroom. I have my skincare, like that trending headband that the influencers would wear when they do their skincare, and it's like bubbly, but it like holds my hair back perfectly because I just got done doing my makeup. But my babies are both asleep and I'm filming the podcast and I'm in my closet. We're trying something new. We're trying a different setup. So let me know if you guys like this more, if it sounds better. I did just get a mic, so you guys were just like really up and coming, right? We're just cool, doing good things here on the podcast. So welcome to episode 3. Today we're talking about friendships. And if you've ever had a friendship breakup, setting boundaries and how you deal and cope with a friendship breakup. February has kind of been dedicated to this like little idea, to this little series, this like mini series idea of kind of talking about like relationships and love and boundaries and how to find more confidence in those areas. And I'm really liking this idea of doing like these mini segments where it all kind of ties back together. So if you're just listening for the first time, the episode before we were talking about finding confidence in sex. The episode before that, we were talking about anxiety, depression, how you deal with that as a spouse, how you support your spouse who may be suffering from that. If you're struggling personally with anxiety, depression, or thoughts, that first episode that we did, I actually did with my husband. And we just share our perspective and how we feel about it and things that we have found to help us get through, as well as just supporting one another through some challenging times in our marriage. So we're now on episode 3, and today we're going to get into the nitty-gritty of talking about a friendship breakup and why that feels harder than an actual breakup. I've heard that a lot when I was asking you guys and prompting you for feedback on this episode. So many of you had said like a friendship breakup feels so much harder than an actual like romantic breakup. And last night I was down in my teenager's room and we were like, he was sitting at his computer doing his homework. What a good boy. Shout out to my teenager. And we were talking about like the evolution of his friendships and how crazy it's going to be that he's going to be a senior this year. And that is just so hard for me. That's an episode that I'm wanting to film and talk about, is just talking about like how moms prepare for your babies flying the nest. There's so much information and support around our babies coming to the nest and prepping for that and like actual nesting, right? That's an actual thing. But no one ever talks about how hard it is to prepare yourself for your kids leaving the freaking nest. Like the other day, Cooper texted me and he's like, look, Mom, I'm a grown up. I booked my own haircut. I kid you not, I cried. I'll probably cry talking about it right now. I will. I was like, but I can still do that for you. It was just like this really small moment, this like really little blip of me just like seeing him do something for himself that he could easily have been doing this whole time. But it was just like this little like peek into the future of what's to come and him just needing me for like simple things less and less. I know he'll always need me, but you know what I'm saying? Like it just felt like, wow, that was big. And it was such a little thing. So anyways, that's an episode to come that I think could be really interesting. But today, we're talking about friendship breakups, and it made me sad to see and hear from so many of you who are going through this, who have gone through this, who will go through this. And so back to what Cooper and I were talking about, we were talking about preparing for his senior year and just how crazy it's going to be that he's going to be a senior. And we started talking about friendships, and I told him, I was like, I should have you on the podcast because tomorrow we're talking about friendships and like how you deal with that. And he's like, you know, it's so crazy. Like when I was in middle school, he's like, I could have sworn that me and XYZ, like he named a couple of his friends that he was really close with, would be friends for forever. And he's like, and now it's like, we don't even talk. And there wasn't a big falling out. There wasn't a big fight. There wasn't drama. It just was like the evolution of them growing up. And I was like, you know, buddy, it sucks, but like, it doesn't change much when you're adult. I'm like, I have felt like I have gone through that in my adult life where there wasn't actually like one big moment or one big fight. And the friendship kind of just drifted and went its own way, and you kind of just grow out of it. And I was like, it's just really hard because sometimes it's easier to like cope or like to find closure on a friendship when there has been like this big fight or there's like this really easy reason to pin down like, this is why I'm not friends with them anymore. And I said the hardest part of friendships evolving and growing apart and just kind of like, you know, they call it the great scattering. I think it was Mel Robbins who had said this, like, you know, your senior year after you graduate, it's called like the great scattering, when all your close friends and circles like just scatter the world and they go on about their lives. They're going to college, they're maybe getting married, they're going to internships, they're serving missions. Like there's so many different paths and, you know, journeys that people go on after they graduate. And you think that you'll have your senior summer together, but really I was telling Cooper, I was like, it's the summer before. And I was like, because after your senior year and everyone graduates, like it's kind of like you're on this fast track to like growing up all of a sudden. And I remember like when I graduated, I remember there was like one more hangout where I distinctly remember like everybody kind of being together. And it was like this weird feeling in the air of like, we knew we were friends, but we knew that it was going to change and that everybody was kind of just going to go their own way. And I told Cooper, I was like, so you really need to make the most of your junior year summer, like the summer before you're a senior. I was like, because, you know, after you graduate, I feel like it's just going to change so quickly. And then as you grow and evolve into adulthood, it doesn't get any easier. Friendships don't get any easier to come by. And the friendships you think that you will hold or keep close with, or that will stay like, you know, in check, like it's so hard how easy it is to let those friendships just grow, just because that's just how life is. And so we just like got into this really good conversation about it, and it went so perfectly with today's episode and just talking about that. It made me sad for him because it is like, friendship is so hard. It's so important to people, and it's so important to have solid, great friendships. But as an adult, or even just like as somebody in high school, like I just remember my mom actually always telling me, like, if you can find one really good, loyal friend who is just there for you through the thick and the thin, who never betrays you, or who you feel like confident that you could just really trust. Like she's like, consider yourself lucky. And I do. I have a girlfriend who I have been friends with since I was 11 or 12, and I call her like, she is my best friend. Like she's the one that I would call if I killed somebody. She would be like, where are we taking the body? She is the one I would call if, like, you know, in my life, she's the one I call when my world is literally crashing down. When I went through my divorce, I really relied on her heavily. And it's crazy. We actually like went through so much similarities in our lives at the same time. And like it just was crazy how much we had to rely on each other. But there was definitely like times in our friendship where we weren't as close, and there wasn't a big reason, and there wasn't like a big fight or a big fallout, but we just kind of grew apart. But the one thing that I feel like keeps us best friends is no matter how much time goes on between us, like we always are able to pick back up and just like go to dinner and like shoot the shit essentially, and it's fine. Like there's I think we've only gotten in like one serious fight, and it was necessary. I yelled at her and I was keeping her in check. She probably should have yelled at me a couple times. Christina, why haven't you yelled at me? And kept me in check. But that was like our only one fight, but we like just gave ourselves time and then it like worked itself out. But friendship is hard, and the evolution of how you grow as an adult and like where your life takes you through these pathways and like who you're close with is really hard. Because if you think about it, like, you know, your life is kind of like where your time is spent, and the people in your life is where your time is spent, right? So like for us and like where we're at in our chapter right now, we spend so much time inside our home, church or church activities, and our kids and kids activities. So we've been meeting new friends at like our kids' school, our kids' activities, dance moms, jujitsu, baseball, soccer parents, a lot of Cooper's baseball like friends I'm friends with. And it's hard because they also have their lives and things they're doing. So like that's like kind of the circle that we're in. That's kind of the friendships that we're around. And so we just like, that just naturally happens. Like that's who we become friends with, right? And so Jackson and I try really hard to foster great relationships with those people. Cause I'm like, if we're going to be in this sport and we're going to like really stick with it, like we're going to be around these people a lot. Like we need to try our best to be friends with them. So we try to like invite people to go to dinner. We try to like have game night at our house, but like, it's also hard because like, here is a toxic trait about me. I feel like I want to be invited, and feelings get hurt if I'm not invited, but I also don't want to go if I'm invited because I'm tired, or I actually have a little bit of social anxiety. That's another episode we could talk about. Having friends outside of that, like my one best friend, I'm just appreciative that she gets it, because like she has 4 kids, she's married, they're in their busy run of life doing their things, their jobs, their kids' activities. Luckily our girls go to the same dance company, so we do see each other there. But like when we can find a time, like I can't remember the last time we all went to dinner. It was probably last year sometime. But what I love about them is like they find grace for us in that, and like I hope vice versa. And we try to like be friends like in the moments where it matters. Like she helped me the other day pick up my daughter's dance costume. A lady had made it for me in Utah, and she was driving through Utah and she like just picked it up for me. And so I like love that I have those kind of friendships, and like when people are in my life who get that and who give me grace with being such a busy mom, such a busy wife, trying to work, like it's so nice, because it is hard. Like if you can't find a friend, like somebody that you have similarities with, or like you want to like, you know, establish a friendship with, like with the place where you work, or like the most time you're spending, maybe it's the gym. It's hard because when you're so busy, you have to be very selective of when or who you're spending your time with. And for me, like maybe this is selfish, but it's like, I want that time to be really valuable, and I want to walk away from spending who I spend my time with to make me feel happier and more filled and like motivated to be a better person, or even just like being around someone where you don't have to do anything. You can just be chill and it feels like peaceful and calming. Like those are the kind of people I want to be around and spend my time with. I think that that's so important when choosing your friendships. But I wanted to get into like just kind of your guys' feedback on like how you guys have felt going through a friend breakup, and just going into some questions and some like situations that you guys shared with me. Let me take a drink of the Alani. We move really quickly over here. So I remember at the beginning of the episode, we were talking about energy drinks, and I'm curious to know, share your guilty pleasure with me. Is it soda? Is it coffee? Is it tea? Is it energy drinks? I don't drink a lot of these. I don't try to have like it's a goal, but I try not to have a lot a week, but I definitely have like a couple, like 3 or 4, like, I'm sorry, but they're just really good. And when they're cold and they give you the energy and the focus, it's really hard not to like, you know, love them. The first response that I got, and what I had prompted on Instagram, was how to deal with a friend breakup. We're talking about it this week on the podcast. Share where you're at. And the first response I got was block, delete, and move on. Never been happier. Been almost 2 years. Okay, this is such a funny, I love this response, because I know people feel a lot of different ways about this, and I'm actually going to call my freaking self out right now. So I want to say it was like last year, I really wanted to start getting serious about like really branding my business and making this my Instagram and like my YouTube more of a business. I wanted to syndicate everything and pull it together and like make it a business. And that's when I hired a coach. I like started going through the rebranding process, which this is why we are here now, right? And so I was really like trying to buckle down and be like, okay, I really want to make this a business if I'm going to spend so much of my time here, and I really want to just like hone in and make this, you know, more of a business place. And I was following over like 1,700-ish people. And I was like, you know, I need to like really like, I feel like it's so easy for me to waste my time on social media, right? We've all been the scroll troll where you like start scrolling and all of a sudden you're like on your cousin's ex best friend's baby daddy's page and you're like, why am I here? And so I'm like, I just want to be more intentional with like the brands that I follow. Number one, also so that I stop getting influenced of buying so much crap online, and like who I'm spending my time with and sharing. Like I know that my page is very public, but also like when I choose to follow somebody, it doesn't always necessarily mean like it's that deep for me. It's like a business move, right? It's like something that I can gain or I find value in. But there's a lot of people that I'm like, you know, I really like them as a person. And if I ran into them at the grocery store or wherever in public, I'd be like, hi, how are you? It's good to see you. And I would have no weirdness about it, but like I don't necessarily follow them on Instagram. I don't need to follow them on Instagram. Like they don't comment on my stuff and I don't comment on their stuff. And so it's just like kind of like a worm category of people that I'm like, I don't want to hurt their feelings by unfollowing them. But like, it's just for me, it's not like the business move I want to carry moving on into 2025. So anyways, I went through this like unfollowing spree of like being more intentional with like how I want my business to be representative, who I'm following, what I'm telling my algorithm, you know, and that sort. And I was like really stressed out. I'm like, is it going to hurt people's feelings? Am I like sending this message of like, I don't want to follow you on Instagram? Because I know it can feel that way. I'm like, I would get it. I would get like if someone explained it to me like that like, you know, if they're doing for a business and like their business was like about fitness or mechanics or just something that like I don't talk about, why someone wouldn't want to personally follow like me. I'm like, I would get it, you know? And then Jackson and I were talking, my husband and I were talking about, his name's Jackson, if you guys don't know, we were talking about it was some YouTuber or something. And we were talking about just like the history of family vlogging. I can't even remember what the topic was about, but I went to her page and I was like, oh, what a bitch. She unfollowed me. What did I do? And then I like literally had to like started laughing like hysterically. And my husband was looking at me like, what is going on inside your head? And I was like, I literally just like went through this 30-minute conversation with myself about how like it shouldn't hurt my feelings if someone isn't following me and it's not a big deal and they could have their reasons. And I was like, but then I literally was just a hypocrite and got mad at myself or got mad at this girl for not mad, but you know what I'm saying? Like in my head, I was like, she unfollowed me. So it was like such a good life lesson in that moment to be like, okay, sometimes like setting boundaries doesn't necessarily mean that like you're toxic or you're bad or that, you know, somebody has done something major to you. If you're not like, you know, social media is how we spend a lot of our time now. It's how we socialize. And so like, if you're cleaning up those boundaries, like don't feel like you owe anybody an explanation. And if someone's that upset and they come to you, just like shoot them straight and tell them. But I also can see like from her comment, she was like, block, delete, unfollow. Setting boundaries can be really healthy. And I have learned so heavily that if there's somebody on I say Instagram because I feel like it's like my social platform of choice, but TikTok, whatever, that you just see their stuff and it doesn't bring you joy and it doesn't make you want to be like a better, happier, more fulfilled, like great person, like just unfollow them. It's not that deep. It really is not that deep, and move on from that. And if like it is that deep and they're like making you feel bad, or you know, they're using it in a way to like, ooh, the biggest frustration is when you can tell someone is feeling a certain way and they're posting about it or creating content around the way they're feeling, which I think we're all generalizing. Like a lot of us probably do that in our lives without even realizing. Like when we're sad, you know, or like when we're happy, like you can kind of read it through people's content. And I'm for sure have been guilty of this. Like nothing makes me cringe more than going back and reading my freaking Facebook post from, you know, whoever knows how long ago. And like, wow, I was really needing attention that day from the way I was posting. But like being more evolved, I would like to think, and a little bit more mature. I'm trying to figure out a way to say this where it's not like being just like so blunt, but maybe that's what I do. I definitely have been, I feel like, on the other end of content being made that I felt like was being triggered at me through a friendship where it was like, when you find your best friend and they're your new circle and you feel so much more alive. And I remember thinking like, wow, was that like is that supposed to hurt my feelings? Or are they trying to send me a message? And then I remember just being like, you know what? Good for them. Good for them that they found their circle and they moved on. And it's not like I knew the Mel Robbins theory back then, but it was kind of this joke that Jackson and I had made early on in our marriage, where he had said, like, when his roommates would go on dates with really hot girls, instead of being like jealous, or instead of being like, oh man, I wish I was on that date with her, he would be like, you know what, good for you, man. And that like always made us laugh, because I'm like, you know, girls are the worst. I shouldn't generalize, but women in general, I feel like sometimes have a hard time cheering another woman on that feels like threatening to them. And like, tell me if I'm wrong, but I feel like as a girl, being a girl's girl and being around other women, maybe I can't say women are more like this than men, but because I'm like a girl's girl and hanging out with girls, it feels like it's easy for women to get jealous. And it's not a trick that I've learned to make me feel more confident and like less insecure, is that same mentality of like, good for them. Like, look at her, get that bag, honey. Like, whatever it is, like, you lose that weight, you work out, you whatever, get that promotion. And it just is like, does this, instead of being the girl to like look at another woman and be like, oh, she must get Botox, or she, you know, whatever we want to say to make ourselves feel better, because that's what we're doing, right? Instead of being that girl, like cheering another person on and being like, good for you, do what makes you happy, it just internally flips the way that you feel so quickly. And it just has helped me so many times. So try it next time you're feeling that way. Okay, I went on a rant. I'm so sorry. Slowly pull away if they ask why. That opens a conversation. If not, feelings are mutual. So I guess it depends on the situation that you're in, and like, what is your reasoning for wanting to pull away from a friendship? Is it because you genuinely feel like it's toxic and it's not good for you? Then obviously, like, draw your boundaries clear, and definitely like, you know, get to a place where you can recognize like what your life looks like and feels like without that person in your life. And also, don't be afraid to do the self-work, right? Like, I don't want to say that we're all the victims and none of us do anything wrong, but I also feel like we're human beings and we make mistakes, and relationships go both ways. Even if it's like a 99 and 1, I try to put myself in this mindset of like, there's something I can always work on and learn from this. You know, maybe there's like a very small chance that you were the victim and 100% it is their fault. But I would like to think like, even in that scenario, you can always learn something. You can always better yourself. You can always grow and be a better person in some way. And I think that people come into our lives for a reason, and it's to like teach us something. It's to, you know, teach us something about ourselves or about them or about relationships, that we can always be learning and growing and evolving. And so like, through a friend breakup, I would really encourage you to like, you know, not just point the finger and be like, you, but like also like take time to like reflect on yourself. I can't remember where I saw, I think it was actually Mel Robbins had put up a quote on Instagram, was like, sometimes a friendship is a great mirror, like a reflection of to who you are, something along those lines. And that like really made me stop and think like, wow, like sometimes I feel like I have these high expectations in my relationships and my friendships, and I need to make sure that if I'm being a mirror, that I'm also bringing to the table like what I'm expecting, because it's really unfair to have these high expectations of people and to really just like want the world from them when we're not really giving as much as we're expecting. And so like, if you need to pull away and set your boundaries, and, you know, really like take time to think about what your life looks like and feels like without them. If your life is feeling and looking better and you're feeling different, then maybe it's a sign that like, yeah, you don't need that person in your life as your friend anymore. But also take some time to reflect on who you are, what you can learn, how you can become better. I feel like when I started realizing that trick in like friendship breakups or just actual breakups, it just completely changed me, and I felt like made me ready for like the people that I needed in my life. And I started attracting the right people when I wanted to do the internal work. Someone says, think about it as what you would tell your friend if they were going through this. Yeah, first and foremost, if anyone is going through a painful friend breakup, I would just say, I'm so sorry. It really sucks. It really sucks if you can't draw conclusions as to why the friendship's ending. I would always try to say, extend the olive branch if it's worth it for you. If you feel like it's worth it to maintain that friendship and it's really important to you, I would do everything you can to be like, hey, this is important to me. You are important to me to have in my life, and I value you and I care about our friendship, and I feel like this, and this is going on. Is there like a time and a place where we could meet up? Texting, I think, is really hard because there's so much that can get lost in translation. Even if you can FaceTime, or even if you can, like, I don't know, Marco Polo, but just to like hear people's emotion and hear people's tone is so different than texting. So like if you're having a friend break up and it is just really eating away at you, maybe you need to just have the hard conversation with them. And I know that's really hard and awkward to do, but if it's important to you, you'll make time for it. And if it's important to them, they'll make time for it. And if the friendship is meant to last, like you'll figure your way through it. My best friend of 5+ years wasn't saying the kindest things about my spouse, so I had to let that friend go. She doesn't seem to understand why I've been distant. That's a no-no. That's so hard because I have been friends with somebody who would always gossip about one of our other friends' husbands. And I found myself like getting so involved in this like relationship that I wasn't even invited into. And I remember thinking like, well, why doesn't this person just leave him if he's like so toxic and so mean and, you know, does all these things? And I was getting so worked up about it. And then I was like, you know, it's none of my business. And you know, maybe that friend is just venting to you because they think that you deserve better, or that they see, you know, maybe some signs that you're not seeing. And so that's really hard because it's like, at that point, it's almost like you're being asked to like question, like, what's more valuable to me, like my spouse and I's relationship and like where we're at, or my friendship and her opinion of my marriage. You know what I'm saying? And I think at that point you have to determine for yourself, like, where you're at in your marriage and where you're at with your friendship, and like what ultimately is the most important thing for you. Because at the end of the day, like, your marriage should be number one and your relationship with your spouse should be number one, and nobody should be able to infringe on that. Like, that is sacred territory, that is sacred ground. Like, you want to protect that at all costs. And if it means cutting out a toxic friend, like, snip, snip, bye, you know, like, she needs to not be in. But if she like reached out, or if she was like pressing it, or if you felt unsettled about it, I think you could 100% have a conversation, and it doesn't have to be like a big hairy thing. You could just say, hey, like, it's really hard for me to hear you like talk down about my spouse. Like, this is my spouse, this is my life partner. Like, surely you can see why like that's inappropriate. And if I've asked for advice from you about my relationship, I won't do that anymore. Like, I just need to draw a boundary there, but I would still like to be friends with you. Like, can you honor like these requests? And if she's like, yeah, oh my gosh, I'm sorry, I didn't realize. Because maybe she's also coming from this place of like, she's struggling in her marriage and she doesn't realize that she's like using your marriage to like off-put that. You know how sometimes people do that when we all do that. We make everything about ourselves and we don't necessarily always realize it. So maybe it's one of those things. But if, like I said, if the friendship's important to you, like, you could talk through that one, I think 100%. This is so hard, accepting the fact that people grow apart. I have more, but I'm limited, haha. I think that's like a big part of growing through adulthood. And we kind of talked about that at the first of the podcast. But like, I really am a believer of like, if it's worth it to you, like, you'll make time for it. Whether it's FaceTiming, sending like fun gifts in the mail, you know, texting, conversations, like, you'll find a way to make it work. Because some of my closest friends live in the same state as me, and we find a way to make it work. Like, it's not like we hang out every Friday night or every weekend, but because like those relationships are important to me, I try to foster them in ways that I can. And when you're an adult and you get busier, you realize that. And like, I just think that it's true to be said that if it's important to you, you'll figure it out and you'll make it work. This is a hard one. What to do when you realize that you value your friendship way more than them? That is really hard, because I feel like that's kind of just like the definition of my personality. I feel like I'm always the person to, not always, that sounds like really conceited, but I definitely, when I find a friend, I definitely feel like I try so hard to pour into them and invite them to my lunch table and find opportunities for us and like connect with them. And it's hard when you feel like you're just the one that's always giving and giving and giving and they don't give back. But what I've learned is people try in their own ways, and you have to really recognize that for people, like the individual person, right? So you may feel love in one way where it's like gifts or acts of service or like conversations, and they may feel love by like quality time or, you know, whatever. And so you could just be speaking different friendship languages. But if you're like noticing that when you're around that person and you're just feeling more drained and more like you just keep on giving and it's not being met, I think it's worth having a conversation and just like giving them an opportunity to open up. Like in any of these circumstances, it's always worth a conversation and giving them time to open up and just talking to one another. Because if you can resolve things peacefully, even if you end up walking separate ways at the end of the day, like it's just better to have something peacefully end or like come to some kind of soft conclusion rather than just like leave on bad terms. No one likes being in a room with someone where they're like, oh, I was in a fight with her and we haven't spoken, and there's just like that awkward tension. Like nobody likes that. And so I think it's really helpful, just like psychologically for yourself, for your own mental game, to try to end things peacefully, like in a good place. Someone said, mourn it. It's like mourning the loss of someone who is still alive. That's heavy. That's heavy. And I think that could be true. And maybe you just need to get to that place where you realize like you've hit the point of no return and you do need to like remove yourself in every possible way and just move on. A lot of you have said like, I'm going through this. It's easier just to pull away and walk away. For me, the simple rant and time and space has always helped. I've to this day have never found out how to do this. Can't wait to hear your advice. Lean into your other friends and fill the time with stuff and people you love. A lot of you collectively have gone through this, are going through this, or want advice on how to go through this. And I think to like generally like put it all under an umbrella, like I think like we all are so time poor in our life. Like we all have such limited time, and where we choose that time is an investment. That's how I see it. It's an investment, and it may feel selfish, but hear me out. When you like spend your time, whether it's like at the gym or at work or with a spouse, right? Like you're choosing to put your time into those places. So when you have free time for like hobbies and friendships, like you want to make those things worth your time, right? And they should fill your cup as you like fill theirs. It just kind of is like this give and take. And if you're in this place where you just feel like your time being spent, the limited time that you have being spent, isn't feeling like an investment for you, it's just, I know it's really hard, but maybe it's just like as simple as like, you know what, like this isn't feeling like what I'm needing in my life. It's time for me to step back and to find other things that like fill my cup and fill my time and fill me. And maybe it doesn't have to be deep and sad and scary, but sometimes we have like these big conversations and stories in our heads, and it's like, really, you know what, like maybe this just ran its course and it's not that deep, and maybe I just need to like take time and put my time into like other hobbies or other friendships or other people that want to nurture me and make me feel good. And I think like when you go through these different like opportunities and you try new things, you'll realize like what feels good for you. And I think when that you have that feeling, you follow it and you chase it hard, and that kind of feels like your answer. You have to realize it's not always about you if someone decides to end a friendship. And I think that's so true. That feels really hurtful when you don't get an explanation and you don't get a closure, but it's kind of like one of those bless and release things. And sometimes we don't have answers. And I know that's really hard for a lot of us to move on. We don't have like a definitive answer because we get in our head and we make it about us. And it's like, well, what did I do? And what did I do wrong? And you know, like it just is really hard to not let like yourself mentally spiral. But sometimes it is about that other person and where they're at. And if, like I said, like if it is worth it for you, I just keep coming back to like, if the friendship truly is worth it for you and you really do value that person and that friendship and that connection, it is always worth just reaching out and being like, hey, if you just need space right now, let me know. If you just are setting boundaries because you're going through something, like I just want you to know I love you and that I'm here for you, and like we can figure this out, whether it's 6 months down the road or a year down the road. Like it's important to me that I do my part. That's also something I think it's important, is like when you're going through something like this, to know that you did your part and you went down every road possible to like find a solution or to feel like you've like exhausted every option. I think that that's so important, because then you can really truly feel like, you know what, I gave it my all. I've tried on every level, on every capacity. And if they're just not getting it, maybe they're never going to get it. Someone said, unpopular opinion, but don't delete any photos. There will come a time, maybe years. Yeah, like maybe if you went through like a toxic like fight or friendship, it's easy to like delete pictures and to like, you know, see it and just get the ick and like get it out of there and move on. But time does heal all wounds. I truly believe that. Like, time helps so much. Like, think how many times you've been in a fight with like your mom or your spouse or, you know, anybody. And like, you're in the moment, you're so heated. It's like, you can't see how they could ever like treat you any other way, or, you know, whatever it is. Like, you're in the just like this very intense fight. And then like a year goes by and you're like, wait, what were we fighting about? What was that big blow up fight about? Right? Because sometimes it's just like, time just needs to heal and needs to carry you through. And then you have this space to like be more of an open thinker and just like really look at the situation from every angle and have like time to heal, to process, so that you're not reacting just like out of anger or hurt. And time really can help. Let yourself be upset, talk about it and feel. Don't rush any emotion, just move on. Yeah, I think as human beings, we quickly want to feel better all the time. It's like we're like dopamine addicted. Like, we just always want to feel better, but sometimes it's so healthy just to sit in your emotions. And even if it sucks, like, it's good to sit in the suck sometimes, because it can teach you so much about yourself, what you want, where you're going, how you want things to evolve, how you want to change yourself. And sometimes it's good just to sit right there in those feelings and just deal with them and like let them work themselves out. This has for real been worse than a romantic breakup for me. All the self-care is needed. I think that's true, because friendships are just different than like a romantic relationship. It fills you in a different way. And like, for me, thinking about like a friendship breakup is hard, because I treat my friendships differently, obviously, than my relationship with my spouse. And like, I feel like there's just like the smallest amount of things that will remind me of that friendship, like a GIF or a song or a show. And it's hard. It's hard because it's like this constant reminder of once was that isn't anymore. And what I just like keep going back to, and this is kind of like the tone for the episode, is, you know, really deciding for myself, like, if it's worth it for me and, you know, for them to reinvest in the friendship and the time and to hash out what we need to get through to find a resolve. And if the resolve is just to be like, shake hands and be like, I love you, I wish you the best, like, good luck in the world, or is the resolve like, yay, we can like continue on in our friendship? But no joke, like, friendship breakups are hard. And I think I've gone through enough in my life where it's almost given me like a little PTSD with who I trust my time and energy with. And I just keep coming back to this like idea that, you know, like, I need to be the best version of myself so I can attract those kind of people in my life. And what I've really learned that's been a hard lesson for me is that when people want to show you who they are, when people are willing to show you who they are, you should believe them. And that's shown itself to me so many times. Someone said that growing out of people is okay. And I agree. I think that sometimes it doesn't have to be this big fight or this big knockout, drag down, she said, he said, they did, she did. Sometimes it's just like our lives and our paths are going in different directions, and you want different things, or you value different people or time or hobbies or whatever. And it's just not worth it because your paths are just going different ways, and it's okay to grow out of people. Again, if it's worth it for you to find like a peaceful resolve and to have that conversation, and you'll sleep better at night, you'll feel better, like if you bump into them in town, then it is worth it. And you should try every option to like find peace and settlement there. But if it's not, like, maybe it's just one of those things where it's ran its course and you don't need to hash it out to try to make something into nothing. Like, right? You can't, what's that saying? Like, you can't beat a dead horse. That's terrible. Who came up with that saying? Is that the saying? You can't, I don't know. But you guys get what I'm saying. And I want to end the podcast with sharing like some life lessons or like red flags that I have learned through friendships that maybe will help you and maybe they won't. Maybe you can be like, nah, I don't agree. I'd love to hear your feedback. Here's a list. I was like sitting in the bathtub last night and I was like, if I could go back and tell like my high school self, like, here are some red flags, or here are some things that like don't work for me that I've learned about myself over the years that just give me the ick, or that I should have been like, whoa, I'm going to share them with you. Okay, so number one, if everybody is this person's best friend, it might be a red flag for you if you're also their best friend. Like, the idea of having like 25 best friends, like, she's my best friend and he's my best friend and they're my best friend and you're my best friend, like everyone's their best friend. Don't you feel like it kind of like ruins the title and waters down the meaning of like what a best friend is? And maybe I'm wrong in this thinking, because I have a lot of really close friends or people that I've been like, yeah, you're my best friend. But like when I think of my one best friend, there's like one person that comes to mind, and it's like my longest, closest, most trusted, like she's my real OG. I'd like go to the grave with her, you know, best friend. Go to the grave with her, take her to the grave with me, take her secrets to the grave with me. That's what I'm trying to say. She is my best friend. But like when there's like that one girl where it's like they have 25 best friends and everyone's their best friend, to me that's just like red flag, you know? And number 2, tells you everyone's secrets or like gossips about everybody to you. Because then it makes me think like, if you're willing to tell me their secret and they're trusting you to not tell, but you're telling me and you're telling me like, don't tell anybody, like the chances of you telling my secrets to them are probably really high, right? So, or you know, those people that gossip about everyone else when they're not in the room. It's just like, so then does that mean that they feel safe in, like, it also makes me feel like you feel safe gossiping to me because like you think I'm that kind of person. Like that also kind of feels like a dig, and I haven't created this like healthy, mature relationship where we don't do that to people. Like, don't get me wrong, a good vent session with your best friend is very needed, and you need your person where you can like, you know, talk trash to whatever. But like when you're around somebody who is always being like, this is their secret, and this is what they did, and this is what I know about them, and this is what they told me, and I'm not supposed to tell, so don't say anything. It just makes me wonder like, oh shoot, like who are you telling my secrets to? So that's a red flag for me. Number 3, this is something that's like a good thing. Look for somebody who checks in when you're being quiet or when you really need someone, and not just checks in like, hey, I'm here if you need anything, sends a text, but like, you know, those people that just like show up and they're just there for you and they know how to read you, and they like have learned like when you get quiet, like when I'm going through things and I like struggle, I kind of get quiet and shut down. And when my friends that like know me and like reach out and show up and they just are there, that just is like, oh, you're my people. Thank you for like, I don't make it easy for you, and I didn't reach out and I didn't ask for help, but like pay attention to those people, right? Who just keep continually showing up for you in ways when you're like, I really needed that. Number 4, this one is so hard for me, but I feel like for me, it's important to me when I find people in my life who want to share their opportunities and wins with me, and not like the spotlight, but just like when they're excited that they've done something or that they've accomplished something, or, you know, vice versa. When I accomplish something or I'm doing something great, they're there cheering me on. Like they're being that girl in my corner, and they're creating space for me to be that girl in their corner. That is somebody I want to be friends with. I can't tell you how many times I feel like I've been the person to be like, yeah, come to this event, let's collab, let's come together on this, let's invite this person, let's like, everyone's welcome to sit at my lunch table. But then it's like, when I've seen the roles reversed and I've had the opportunity to be invited to sit at their lunch table, that has been the hardest thing for me, to see me not be invited, because it's like, wait, I did that for you. And these are things I'm still working through, because I understand that there can be like, you know, circumstantial, whatever. But that to me is just a red flag. Not into it, not the vibes, not my vibes. If they're not supportive of other friendships, or like you wanting to like grow the friendship or friendship circle. And I get like you have your ride or dies, right? You have your people where it's like, it's just fun to have your girls' night with your people. But for me, like, I can't stand when I try to be that girl who, like, I feel like I try to be friends with everybody. I try to connect everyone together. My mentality is like, the more is merrier. Like, I was friends with her from high school, but I met her on this work trip, and now I met her at son's soccer game, and now I'm friends with all these girls. But like, how fun would it be if we all like went to dinner together and all of us could learn about each other and all become friends? And when I've had like a friend in my life where it's like, I don't like this girl because of this, or like, no, let's not invite her, let's just be us. I like get that there's time for that, but for me, that also kind of also feels like this like little red flag of like, it feels a little bit controlling, and it feels like a little bit closed-minded, and again, just not my vibe. Something that I can't stand is when a friend is not a good listener. And like, also, if I'm not being a good listener, like, I hope my friend will call me out, because when you're needing somebody and you're like really opening up to them, and they're like, their body language is receiving and they're like listening to you. Like my sister-in-laws, Kaylee and Colette, the ones that I've really turned to a lot throughout my life, they're incredible listeners. And when I tell them something, or when I'm like divulging like something to them, they fully give me their attention, and they're like receiving what I'm saying with their body, with their eyes, with their ears. Like their body language is like, yes, I'm hearing you. I've had friends where I've been telling something very serious to, and they'll like be on their phone, or they'll be like, oh, like they just don't, I don't know. You know, when someone's just like really listening to you and they're being there for you, like that means a lot to me. And it's been a good thing for me to go through, because I'm like, wow, like I know how that feels when someone isn't listening to you and they're just like passively being like, yeah, and they're not really listening, right? Like we all know how that feels. And so it's like been a good like note for me that when someone's telling me something, I need to fully like take it in and be a good listener. Oh, this has been really eye-opening to me. Like when you notice that their family members are treating you differently, it kind of feels like a tell sign of like what they're saying behind you about closed doors. I kid you not. I was like at a sporting event, and this person's kids were like acting shy around me, like they couldn't talk to me or approach me, and it just felt very much like, oh, okay, you don't feel safe around me anymore because of what your parents are saying. And so they're treating me differently. I know Instagram isn't the tell all, but like when someone, I don't know, they don't comment or like follow you in the way that it used to be, it was, is this making sense? This could be like really scratching the surface or like getting petty, but I'm like, that just kind of feels like, you know, that person is close with their family. And when you start to see the signs like trickling down and it's like affecting how they used to treat you, you kind of just feel like, okay, this is making sense. This is drawing a bigger picture. And then the last thing I'll end on is like, how do you feel after you've hung out with them, right? Like, do you feel more drained or do you feel more energized? Do you feel excited and happy about life? Or do you kind of feel like something is missing, something is pulling at you? Because I think that it's like, we all have our off days, right? But when you're around the people that like love you and genuinely care about you and want to cheer you on and want to see you succeed, you can feel that after being with them, because you feel fuller, your cup feels like more poured into. And I think that that's something that like we should never neglect, is like really intuitively how people make you feel. Okay, I would love to know what you guys think about the podcast. If you're watching on YouTube, what do you think about the new setup? If you've gone through a friend breakup, we'd love to hear your guys' tips and advice, or if you're currently going through it, let us know, because we can be here to support you and rally around you and help you feel more confident about the situation that you're in and just feel better, right? That's what we're here to do. Feel better, feel good with Carlie Woods. I'll see you guys next week, and I think that we're going to be having a guest. I'm hoping it will be my son Cooper, and we can talk about high school, growing up in the 2020 era, how his whole experience has been, what to avoid in high school, advice he would give to his younger high school self or younger high school kids. And if you guys have any questions for him, leave them down in the comments and I'll make sure that I give them to him next week on the podcast. We'll be talking about just growing into yourself as a person, finding out who you want to be as an adult, learning to honor what you want versus what your parents pressure you to do, and those kinds of relationships and boundaries. And we will see you next week for episode 4. Bye, you guys.